Okay, I'm live. All right, hi. All right, let me just make sure I'm going live on Instagram. I am. Okay, let me just set this up. If you are watching me on the replay, thank you for watching me. Let me get on the mic. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston, and I'm just setting up the other platforms because I am going live simultaneously on other platforms. Okay, here we go. All right, so my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist, and I come on here to talk about things that people go through and help people think about ways that they can work through it. And my goal behind doing this is to help you shift the way you think. And speaking of shifting the way you think, for people that are in the Massachusetts area and want to kind of explore, if you're a therapist and you're looking to get your license or are licensed and want to explore um, working under a new agency myself. I started a practice. It's called Shifting the Way You Think. And if you go to shiftingthewayouthink.com, you can find the information to apply. And if you are looking for therapy services, there is a wait list that you can join as well. So if you go there, you will find all of that information there. The goal is to not just over time provide just therapy services, but also other services. Because if you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know how much I believe in healing, looking holistically, and not just through individual therapy. Because let me just switch mics really quick. Here we are. I'm not on mic. Okay. Not just individual therapy, because you can do all the talking in the world and still have things trapped in your body. It's a way that most people don't talk about. But that's my goal, is to help people think about that. So last week we talked about the impact of the environment. So if you're new here, every single Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I come on live to talk about mental health and bring up different topics. And people have written in about topics they want to discuss. This is one of the ones that was written in around wanting to kind of get a better understanding of the impact of the past and how you can work on embracing the past. Let me just put it at the bottom to scroll at the bottom. So we're going to talk about that today. Last week we talked about the environment. So if you um, like these episodes and want to listen to them like on the audio podcast, like when you're driving or something like that, you can definitely check them out. I'm streaming everywhere on all podcasting platforms. So today we're talking about the past. And quite frankly, the past is something that most people don't think about. I will be doing a intake with someone, and on my first session, I like to get the history of people, and they will tell me things that have taken place over the past, and then kind of move into the present and what they got going on, and not realize how much the things that have happened in the past are literally affecting what's happening currently in the present. A lot of times we will tell ourselves, we just think like, well, it was 20 years ago or it was 10 years ago. There's no way that that thing is why I'm struggling with my confidence, or there's no way why that thing is the reason why I find myself overeating or over drinking, right? So, my goal in this session today is to just help you understand, because I recognize that finding a coach, a therapist sometimes can be challenging. I also understand the financial aspects of it, which is challenging. And so I started this podcast in general because I wanted people to get tools that can help them, so you can start to feel empowered. Like, knowledge is power. And so trying not to look at the deficits of what you can't do, what you may not have time to do, but looking at, I may not have money for a therapist, or I may not be able to find somebody, but I can listen to this podcast. I can equip myself. I can start the process. So why is it important to embrace your past, right? And so for the people that are visually watching me, the slide says the most important thing about embracing your past is that it frees you to fully live in the present. When you're constantly running from your past or denying its impact, a part of you is always stuck there back in what was. This can keep you from fully experiencing and appreciating the present moment. So the importance of embracing your past is because it allows you to live. A lot of times people are in survival mode, literally, because of how much their past is taking up their mental space. One thing about the mind, and I feel like I say it every session when I'm on here, and I'm always going to say it. So one day it's going to click. One thing about the mind is that it does not have concept of time. So all it has access to is the information that it's been exposed to. So if part of your exposure was trauma, if part of your exposure was like seeing bad things or not really seeing people go forward with their goals, right? If that's been part of your journey and that's what your mind's been exposed to, that's the way your mind is thinking, right? And so, in order to embrace the present, right, you got to start giving it new information. Something like this podcast that you're watching or listening to today, that's something where you're giving your mind new information to try to think things differently, right? If you don't give yourself new information, then you're not able to think about your life differently because your mind is only looking at it in a deficit or in the negative. And so being able to understand that can help you expose yourself to new environments, whether it's people, the people that you're around, whether it's the content that you're listening to intentionally, right? Like just letting it be by accident. Oh, let me check out this thing, right? But making a daily discipline routine to work on like giving your mind new information. Without that new information, your system can only look at what it has access to, right? So that's why it's really important to work on embracing your past, is because if you don't, you are living in the past, right? If you're not embracing your present, you're living in the past. And living in the past prevents you from experiencing life. Living in the past prevents you from seeing the possibilities, right? Like this practice that I started, um, you know, I've been working on this for a while, but because I've been intentionally working on it, even though there's been fears over the last few months of me doing it, it's hard for me to stay in that space because I've been intentionally exposing my mind to the possibilities, right? So if you can work on it, exposing your mind to the possibilities, your mind will begin to show you what it is, right? So let's say your background was very traumatic and nothing, you don't feel anything good has come out of it. Your mind will only keep you in that space. So if there's opportunities for you to grow, it'd be hard for you to see it because of the way your mind has been conditioned. So that's why it's important to embrace it. Now, understanding the impact that your past can have on your present. This is an important one for people that are watching or listening. This slide says trauma can make you more vulnerable to developing mental health problems. It can also directly cause post-traumatic stress disorder, which is PTSD. Some people misuse alcohol, drugs, or self-harm to cope with difficult memories and emotions. Depending on how you're affected, trauma may cause difficulties in your daily life. And I got that from mentalhealth.org. Now, one of the things about the impact that it can have, right? Because it's kind of like, well, if something happened 20 years ago, how is that impacting my drinking, or how am I overusing food, right? Or you're saying I'm self-harming now because of something that happened 20 years ago. The thing about pain, if you're not embracing it, if you're not embracing what was or what has happened, remember, it's your life. You've been exposed to it. You can't unsee or unthink or unhave things that have happened, right? There's no way to ever erase it. But because you haven't been given tools to deal with it, you're trying to figure out how to get rid of it. And so there's no way of just cutting off one part of you without cutting off the other part. So for instance, let's just use drinking for an example. A lot of times when people start drinking early on, and the addiction sets in, it's because when they start drinking, the anxiety feels like it goes away. When they start drinking, the thing that they don't want to think about starts to feel like it goes away and they can like relax, right? But the thing about doing that is that you have to continue to increase it. No one struggles with alcoholism on day one of drinking, right? It's over time it happens. Nobody struggles with gambling on day one. Nobody struggles with food addiction on day one, right? So over time, you're realizing like, oh, this is allowing me to feel better. So you eat more. This is allowing me to feel better. So you drink more because I don't have access to anything else, especially depending on your culture, the way you were raised. If emotions wasn't something that was talked about, no one said like, hey, Celeste, like, how are you feeling? Or how did that affect you? You're not taught how to actually think about how am I feeling or how am I affected, but you're feeling the ramifications of the incident, but you don't have the words to talk about it. So you figure out ways to heal. That's the amazing thing about our mind, is that it helps look for ways to work on something. There's no good or bad with our mind. It's just kind of like, it is what it is. This is helping us. We have to bring the logic in place, right? So when it comes to thinking about what impact can my traumatic experiences have on my mental health, if it's not dealt with, then you can find yourself doing things or having addictions because you want to get rid of pain. My first entry into the workforce was working at a shelter, and I didn't understand substance use disorders, but I got to know people, and the people that were struggling with addictions, listening to their stories. And at a young age, I understood that something happened to you, right? There's this book called What Happened to You, really great book that I read. And it's by Oprah and another doctor. It's called What Happened to You. But it explores people's stories and helps people have more grace and compassion with themselves, because a lot of times, depending on like your treatment modality or who you've seen, people tend to look at the behavior and not like what's going on, especially with kids, right? Kids, if you think you don't have language, kids don't really have language to talk about what they're feeling or what they got going on. And so you see a lot of behavioral acting out, right? Even 2024, you're seeing it even more so with the pandemic and the isolation that they had to experience and trying to reacclimate themselves into like a social space. And so you see the acting out, and unfortunately people looking at only the behavior. They're not trying to get to the root of the problem to figure out like what's going on. And I think this happens with adults too. I don't think we give ourselves grace, or we don't like check in with ourselves and say like, hey, like this is what I'm experiencing because of X, Y, and Z. And so we just beat ourselves up, or we continue the behaviors just to escape. And so like you can't escape what you've experienced, right? And so when you think about embracing your past, I can choose to try to escape and not be present and not enjoy the flowers or the sun, like, and feel like I have a dark cloud over me. I can choose that. Or I can work on little by little embracing those things that I really don't want to think about, but I recognize that they're part of my life and I can't escape it. So why not embrace it? Because clearly it's affecting my life. If you start to like look at the trajectory and how you've been operating, you'll be able to see the ways that what's you're doing or what you're struggling with, how it is affected from your past. So you don't have to be hostage of your past, right? A lot of times people will think like, uh, because this thing happened is why I find myself struggling. And so you don't have to always struggle, right? And a lot of times you've never heard that message before, or you don't have any other way of thinking about it. And so you find yourself struggling with this mindset of, I'm always going to be this way.
And so if you're telling yourself, I'm always going to be this way, your mind is going to believe that and it's not going to show you the possibilities. But if you begin to look at it in a different way, your mind will show you the possibilities. So let's just think about some strategies into how you can work on integrating your present and your past, right? The first thing it says, acknowledge your past. Journaling can help identify areas and improvement where things go wrong. Journaling is a great resource for people. I have this guided journal called 365 Days of Intentional Living. There's so many journals out there. There's journal, like if you type in like journal for women, or you this is a general journal that I created where I'm asking you questions every day and asking you how you're feeling for you to check in. So let's say like I don't want to purchase a journal, and I don't think you have to buy a journal. You can actually just get a notebook, right? And begin to like check in with yourself regularly, or even use the notes app on your phone, right? My goal is not to have you feel like you have to purchase something to start the process, but letting you see what you may have in your environment to start. um, the next thing about thinking about strategies to work on integrating your past and your present, learning from your mistakes. When you can recall the details of an event and express your feelings, you can begin to learn from it. So, expressing how you're feeling about something is important. Even if it was something that you feel like you could have done differently, we'll give everybody grace but ourselves. And so, if you can acknowledge, like, yeah, I went this route. And a lot of times the route you may have chosen was out of survival, right? And so really being mindful and acknowledging when you think about emotions, getting a feelings wheel is a great, this is from beam.com, but you can Google feelings wheel. Having a feelings wheel in your possession to help you name things that are happening is powerful. I always say, like, if you go to the doctor and you're bleeding out and the doctor is like, I don't know what's going on, Celeste, you'll find yourself struggling because you're like, what's going on, right? When it comes to like things you can't see, when the mental health world, a lot of people are struggling because of these like emotions. Like there's all these emotions happening and they don't have a name for them. They've never been taught about feelings or how they are affected by them. And so we're just all walking around acting out on them. Recognizing joyful moments, experiences that have had an impact on you are just as important as the difficult ones. That's important. You can get yourself to a place of a deficit where you feel like everything's so negative that when there is a good moment that takes place, you're not able to see it because your mind's not showing you the possibilities. So when I think about strategies that can help you work on embracing your present, then you have to be intentional about acknowledging the things that have happened well for the day. And this is like a daily journey, right? So at the end of the day, kind of checking in and you're gonna acknowledge what didn't go well, but like what did go well. What we're doing is we're working on recalibrating our mind by doing that. We're giving our mind a new narrative to be able to see the sun, to be able to smell the roses, right? If we're not intentional about it, it won't happen by accident. If you're somebody that's finding yourself feeling always anxious, feeling always overwhelmed, then it's important to implement a discipline of looking at the things that have went well so you can start to bring joy into your life. The next thing to think about is consider other perspectives, remembering that there is always two sides to every story. When I think about that, there's two sides to every story because I'm thinking about like maybe somebody has said things to you, or even when I work with people who may have been harmed by their caregiver or their parent, it's not about excusing behavior, but what I help them do is kind of look at their history or their culture or why they think the way they do. Um, it doesn't excuse behavior. It doesn't excuse what happened. You still should work on boundaries with these people, but you won't internalize it as if like it was a you thing, right? So really thinking about the full picture is really important. Practicing self-compassion will help you adjust. So like as I said earlier, a lot of times we will beat ourselves up more than we will anybody else, right? To be walking around with negative self-dialogue all the time is a hard way to operate in life. But if you can have self-compassion with yourself, like if you have a child that you love or somebody in your life, and think about how you are framing things with yourself, ask yourself, would I say this to this person? Like if they were in my exact same situation, would I talk to them this way? That's a powerful thing to think about. When I pose that question to people, they get really down. Like they feel like I can see their face change. And sometimes they get emotional because they said, I would never say that to my daughter. I would never say that to my friend, right? I would never say that to my niece or my nephew, like the way that I speak to myself. And so a lot of times we don't recognize just how impactful us not having compassion with ourselves can affect us. So really working on having self-compassion is going to be such a game changer. Renewing trust. So avoid second guessing your past and try to detach from it. Instead, be grateful for what you've learned. You know, that detachment, that whole drinking or eating, these things that you're doing to try to escape. You can never escape your past. It's always going to be there. So learning how to embrace it, right? Because when you can embrace it, you can actually work on trusting yourself, because detachment is not possible. The last kind of step, I'm going to show you this 2-minute video, and TikTok can't see, but about I am statements. I am statements are so powerful. Um, a lot of times people will say like they have a hard time with saying things they don't believe is true. When I talk about affirmations, and I have to give them a new perspective, right? Because currently they're affirming that they're not good or they'll never be nothing, right? You're affirming that with the way that you're thinking about your life. And those thoughts have come from experiences of what people have said or done. And so those aren't true, right? So why not give yourself a new narrative, right? And so Lisa Nicole, I'm going to share my screen. She struggled with depression, and it's a 2-minute and 30-second thing where she talks about how she switched up her narrative. It's super powerful, where it can help you really like think about things differently. So let me share my screen, and if you can't hear, you can let me know. Share. Okay. All right. So we're going to press play.
Christy talked about affirmations. Abundant thinkers understand the power of I am. Anything after the word I am is true to your unconscious mind, Michael. Anything after I am, anything after I am, even if you know it's not true, your conscious mind will believe it. Anything after I am. So the use of affirmations is very intentional and very consistent. I was diagnosed as clinically depressed. In 1998, I was diagnosed as clinically depressed. It didn't make sense. I had been in a relationship. I was engaged to get married. And my fiance, who I did not know at the time, was bipolar. And he'd stopped taking his medicines and under the belief system that love can cure anything. And so I ended up being picked up and thrown 3 feet across the room. And I ended up being choked until I passed out. And once I got out of that relationship, I just was different. It was different. So my mom insisted that I go to the doctor. I went to the doctor and I sat on the table and she checked me and talked to me and came back in with a prescription. And she said, Lisa, you're clinically depressed. And I felt like I heard Charlie Brown's parents talking like, wah, 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 wah. Clinically depressed, at least that'll make sense in that same sentence. And she handed me a prescription, and I read the prescription. It had my name on it, and it said Prozac. And I thought, that don't make sense. Lisa Nichols, that don't make sense. And I said, do you mean I'm sad? She said, very, very sad. I said, can I try something? And I'm not recommending you guys, if you're on medication, you stop taking your meds. Please don't do that. I asked my doctor. She agreed. I said, do you mind if I try something before I take this? She goes, yes, but I need to see you back in 30 days. If you're in the same condition, I need us to try this medicine. I said, okay, I can do that. So I went home And every day I got in the mirror and I drilled I am every day because I realized I had forgotten who I was. I just forgot. And it was okay to forget. I just forgot. So every day for 25 minutes, I just went over the I ams. Every day, I am. And then I paralleled that with I forgive you for. Then I paralleled that with I commit to you, Lisa. Every single day. I went back in 30 days and I'm talking to her and I'm on fire. She's just looking at me. And I'm just talking. She twisted her head again. And I'm just talking. She says, wait, I got to stop you. I said, what? She goes, what are you taking? And can I have some? I was like, I'm taking some of me. And so the power of I am can pull you through the darkest moment. The power of I am.
So that was Lisa Nichols, and the power of I am statements are so powerful. So, the way that you're talking to yourself matters. When I work with people, even when I'm not working with people, if I'm just talking to people and the way they frame things, like I have a keen, like I can hear the negative like noise, and I'll let them know, if you're like just saying this out loud so freely to me, imagine what you say to yourself. But we're not taking time to like really think about like our day to day or what we're thinking, because we're so engulfed with life, right? Life's and there's so many distractions. So being intentional about the change in your language with yourself is powerful, right? So integrating your present with your past, telling yourself, I am powerful, I am going to get through this, is something that can help your mind start to look for it. The last thing I want to just say is just think about like shifting the way you think. So this is something that I created this a few years ago, and inside of my logo are the gears that have the words understand, reframe, action, consistency, repeat, and healing. So when you think about shifting the way you think, right, you have to understand what you're thinking. And then as you do that, reframe those thoughts, because a lot of times those thoughts are really faulty. And then you're creating an action plan, right, on how you're going to work through it. And then being consistent with that action plan is going to be key. And then you're going to repeat these steps, right? It's not like a one time, let me go through these steps and I'm okay. As you're repeating these steps, healing starts to happen, right? That's important. And then as you're going through this, thinking about like having faith and believing in yourself, like it would be nice if you had a lot of people in your life that was rooting for you, and the changes you're making and the boundaries that you're making, they're adhering by it. Like that would be nice, but I know that's not always the reality. So we can't bank on that. And so because I can't bank on you validating me or telling me I'm doing a great job, that means that I have to really be mindful on how I am framing things for myself, how I am my biggest cheerleader, especially the fact that I'm always with myself. Now, if people are cheering me on, that's an added bonus. So as you're thinking about embracing your past and allowing yourself to see the future differently, I want you to think about taking it step by step, day by day, and really having grace with yourself around the process, because it's a daily battle. If we lived in a society that promoted wellness, like real wellness, not like a Band-Aid, it would be a lot easier to do because you're embraced by it. The same way January 1st comes around and everybody's all about new year, new me, like the change. You feel fresh, like I'm about to start this journey. What are we in? We're in May, about to be in June, right? You have that same energy from January? No. The reason why that energy was in place is because you've seen the advertisements. People were talking about it, right? You're in an environment that's embracing that. And so even though we don't have that environment here in America, like consistently, that doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means that we have to really be intentional about the process and the changes that we're trying to make. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that makes sense. If you want to check out more of my videos or podcast, If you go to celestetherapist.com, you can find that there. If you want to learn more about the group practice, you can go to shiftingthewayouthink.com. And if there's a topic that you want to discuss on one of these segments, you can go to my website and just fill it out anonymously and just kind of say like, hey, I would love for you to talk about X, Y, and Z. And we can definitely make that happen. So thank you all so much. Thank you, TikTok, for tuning in. And everybody else, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, all of you guys, thank you so much. I'm going to say bye to you. And then I'm going to say bye to TikTok.